This is the Gamers with Jobs conference call for Wednesday, May 26, 2021. I'm your host, Amanda Knowlton, and today we are going to talk about video games that you can play right now. And joining me to talk about that in our first chair, welcome back, Sean Andrich. How are you doing?
I'm a hermit now. It's so nice to be back to talk to people and like make video eye contact. I get to see Lima. I'm spoiling one of our guests already, but I'm very excited to be here. Feeling a little tongue-tied because, like I said, I am a hermit now, but very happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And as you heard, we've also got a special guest, Lima, a stargazer from the forums. Lima, welcome.
Thanks so much. Hello, everyone.
Hey. So one of the reasons why we have you here today is you are a pillar of our community. You are one of our streamers on our Twitch stream, and you've got a pretty successful Twitch stream all on your own. So I did want to highlight that a little bit, and we'll get into that in a little bit later. But it may come as no surprise to you that we may touch on Mass Effect, the Mass Effect trilogy at some point during our conversation today. So I wanted to make sure we had our correspondent from the Citadel. So thank you so much for joining us.
Petition to change her title from Pillar of the Community to Paragon of the Community.
Paragon of the Community, yes, absolutely.
Oh, nice.
And as you heard, also joining us is Rich, the Joy Conjurer. Lovejoy, hello.
Hello, I'm now with my ice cubed whiskey as per last week's request. The ice cube has really opened up the flavors of this scotch. Sorry, it's a scotch, not a whiskey. The ice cube has really opened up the flavors for it, and is quite delightful on this 90-degree day in Brooklyn.
I'm so jealous.
Yeah, it is a room temperature weather out here in Winnipeg. So I would like a little bit of warmth. Yes. It's always better somewhere else. Also joining us, Glendon Staggold-Haas, welcome.
I didn't realize whiskey was going to be a part of this.
I mean, we talked about it last week, but we short memories abound here. Yeah. So I'm feeling a little short myself. I completely forgot about that. So I just want to say that looked delicious, and the glass that you had that in is beautiful. I know that's great visuals for audio here, but what is it that you're drinking?
It's a 18-year monkey shoulder, which is pretty good. I got
no, it's not. No, it's not. It's not a monkey shoulder. That's not what it is. Come on,
that's what it's called.
Is it really? It really?
That is indeed what it is called.
That's amazing.
It is a scotch that I got into when I took a play I wrote called Adventure Quest, which was actually a play in the style of a Sierra game.
Oh wow!
Do tell.
I would love to continue. It gets resurrected every now and again. I would love to continue to bring that back. But I took it to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and the venue that we were at served this whiskey quite a bit, or this scotch quite a bit. And I've developed a liking of it, and it's available locally because everything's available in New York. So yeah.
Okay, I want to just take a moment to sidebar. You made a play that was based off of a Sierra video game?
Yes, we need to talk more about that.
We had a full EGA costume design. It was those 16 colors of EGA. The main character would walk around and be like, "Talk to man," and then the NPCs would have just their set line of dialogue that they could say. And if the main character would try to do things, they'd be like, "I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I don't know about that." They just he would just try to solve these problems by picking up everything that wasn't nailed down on the stage. And it was mostly an experiment in form because it's very funny to have the plot grind to a halt while somebody's stuck on a puzzle and it has to figure out how to attach the fish to the broom and to the rope in order to get into the monastery somehow inexplicably because of the logic of those video games. So it was highly absurdist and a little bit bleak, but a whole lot of fun. It's a fun treat that it started a whole thing of video game theater in New York City. They made a whole festival out of it in the theater where I first put it up.
Oh, that's amazing. Oh my gosh. We're going to have to get some more information on that and see if we can post something in the show notes, even if it's just some little details to get people interested, because that is so cool. I especially with the writing, the writing that Sierra put into their games was very, everything had a sense of humor about it. And even negative or feedback, like if you put in a command that didn't work, sometimes the commentary from that was just so entertaining and so tongue-in-cheek that it's really interesting to hear that interpreted into like a live action art piece. So
like the narrator, omniscient narrator voice that's just a little bit snarky but mostly kind of just like chill and neutral, except when they aren't. That's totally.
That's so wonderful. So anyway, we're here to talk about games that you can play right now. So I wanted to go ahead and kick it off with one that kind of took me by surprise. And it is called Mind Scanners. Now, Mind Scanners it's developed by a pretty small team outer zone. So Mind Scanners, if you've ever played Papers, Please, it is very similar in format and to how that is executed. It's a Orwellian dystopian sort of nightmare scenario where you essentially work for it's like called the Sanctuary or the Citadel or something to that. It's not the Citadel. I'm thinking of Mass Effect. I'm sorry. But basically the big brother of this game has employed you as a mind scanner, and your job is to go out and scan people who have been acting suspiciously. So, caveat, it does touch on mental health in a very, let's say, bleak manner. It, like the mental health of your citizens is sort of what this big brother figure is scanning for. And so you are assessing if people are just quirky or if they actually have some kind of underlying issue that is a quote unquote threat to society. And you develop an understanding pretty quickly that sometimes people are actual threats and other times they're just sort of people who challenge the system. They have your daughter. She is being studied because of activity that she is involved with that seems to be innate and natural to her. So the setting it's bleak, it's dystopian, but it also has like a low magical or low fantasy quality to it, where there is some magic abilities. There is some sort of otherworldliness to it. It touches on mental health in a way that can be problematic, but I think that it handles it well in that it's challenging the ideas of what is like what mental health means and what like blurring the lines between okay and not okay, because you classify people as sane or insane. There's no gray area to this qualifications that the government has given you. So sometimes you're classifying people as insane so you can fix them, and I'm using air quotes to say these things, and what you're really doing is just kind of helping them erase like a bad memory that they're getting stuck on. Maybe they're just not happy with their life, and this is a way to help them sort of move past trauma or things like that. So you're kind of challenging this sort of binary idea of what is okay and what is not okay. And there are different outcomes to the game. I ended up with the good ending. I really liked it. I found the puzzling and the gameplay to be fairly, I don't think it was overly difficult, but I can see where people can find it challenging because it does require you to learn how your tools work, how you can manipulate those tools to get the outcomes that you're looking for. It has some qualities of older game styles that failure is a part of learning, and you need to fail and make mistakes in order to really learn the ins and outs of each of these little puzzles. It's also a puzzle game. There's I want to say 6 or 7 different puzzle types that are incorporated into your gameplay. And time is the mechanic under which everything kind of falls. You've got day-to-day interactions. Every day you're going out and doing new things, and you have about 200 time units per day. So travel takes up time units. Mind scanning people takes time units. Treating people takes time units. So you're trying to manage and navigate your time and still help all these people before they are dangerous to other people or dangerous to themselves or whatever it may be. So there's definitely challenge here, and I think one of the things that really redeems that is the rewind mechanic. So if things aren't going the way that you want them to, where you realize, you just got a bad luck of the draw as far as like puzzle draw, you can rewind time. So you can go back to the beginning of the day and start over. And I find that rewind mechanic, you're not going back and redoing a whole lot of time. It might be like 10 or 15 minutes that you may need to replay, but oftentimes you find that you will have learned something about a puzzle, or maybe you just got a bad draw. So the way that the puzzles work is a bunch of cubes drop in to a meter, and those cubes represent different types of mental issues, quote unquote, or mental concerns that are sort of assisted or fixed by doing a certain type of puzzle. So you have to have the right puzzle pieces in order to complete the puzzles. It's a lot like Papers, Please in that you're trying to assess like who can stay and who can go. You're not helping every single person. You are assessing some people and you're like, no, this guy's fine. Like he's just really smart. Or sometimes you let people go and it turns out that they commit a crime. Other times that they go and become famous or they go and become a great artist. You're not fixing everything. You're kind of assessing who's good and who can take a pass and who needs to be helped. And sometimes it's for the favor of the government and sometimes it's challenge sort of what the government's trying to make you do. So that's Mind Scanners. I think it's delightful. I am so obsessed with this game. I'm going back and playing a bootlicker ending to see if I can get all the different ending types for this game. And since it's a little bit of a shorter one, I think it's a pretty manageable as far as getting all those different ending types. So
do you get a sense that there's this like the boot, like do you get a sense that there's like, you know, for like if you're like aligned with the government, you're a bootlicker, that's like the bad path, and then like if you're trying to help the resistance, that's like the good path? Is it pretty binary like that?
I think so. I'm not too sure because I haven't finished the I hate calling it bootlicker, but that's what it is. Sort of the bootlicker path.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you feel there's any like meta narrative going on here where, you know, that it's a game talking about deeper things and you know, from the sounds of it, perhaps the resistance and the government are stand-ins for, you know, working through mental health challenges. It seems almost too on the nose given our current society where, you know, even the terms insane or crazy, like don't use that. That's not, you shouldn't be doing that in 2021.
Absolutely.
Mental health is a real challenge. So to me, it would be a miss if they didn't just have at least some kind of commentary on that classification.
I think I think they use that whole sane insane to deliberately make you challenge those assumptions. Like I think it is a very clear indication that it's not that simple. It's so inadequate, and it really creates a dynamic that is nothing is that simple. And I think that reducing that to something so simple is overlooking that subtle nuance that is required in order to actually deliberately sort of embrace different levels of mental health and like live with those things. I have a long history as humans of trying to fix it. And like, that is not something you fix. That is something you work with. And it is not always considered a negative. I think society considers a lot of like things regarding mental health as either positive, negative. And I think that's why they chose this very binary structure, is to just really challenge that. There's a lot going on here, and I think it's really easy to overlook some of those details if you're focusing just on the mechanics and just on the pure gameplay. I think a lot of this is more about social commentary. Yep, that's Mind Scanners. That's on PC. I picked it up on Steam. I want to say it wasn't too much, probably like $15 to $20. That's Mind Scanners. I wanted to go ahead and pass it over to Rich. I kind of wanted to hear more about 1000-Year-Old Vampire.
1000-Year-Old Vampire is a tabletop game meant for one player. In reading the first couple of pages of the rules, I was weeping openly just at the implications of what it was going to be exploring thematically. So that's going to be like my content warning on the game. The game does a very good job signaling that it can be a pretty bleak, challenging experience in some ways, but it is also really beautiful and unexpectedly funny and like no other tabletop experience I've ever had. The core concept is you are playing the titular 1000-year-old vampire, and you have a limited amount of memories. You can have up to 5 memories, which can be a collection of a few experiences. So it's not just like bare bones. Like you can have, you know, some pretty substantial memories, but you can only have 5 of them. So inevitably, as time goes on, you're going to have to forget or record them in a journal and then forget, but at least you'll have the journal to refer to. You can't, like, having a diary is baked into the mechanics of the game. And what ends up happening is you get into this experience where the time is flying by, the centuries are passing, and these things that were really important while you were in the moment of doing them are suddenly nothing. They're not important. Those people who were the central people in your character's life, they're dust. They're gone. And maybe you don't even remember them. And the way you try to find meaning in that, and the way, and how you get wrapped up into new things, which you know you're going to inevitably forget or pass on, is just like, it speaks to me in a way that I think I haven't really experienced in a tabletop game. And part of it is I am somebody who has like lost time in their life and has forgotten things because of trauma-based circumstances. And so immediately for me, there was something about this idea of like forgetting these incredibly painful and profound things that was immediately really striking. The way the actual gameplay works is you kind of set up your vampire and it walks you through. It's very simple. You'll start with a bunch of characters in your life. You'll have some skills and some resources. The first vampire I made was an orphaned monk who lived in a monastery with an abusive abbot who would treat him terribly, and kind of like he waited for this kind of nun who would come through every now and then to teach them how to sing. But he was shy, and he ended up getting like dragged due to the series of prompts that come as you're playing. He was barely in that monastery at all, and he was whisked away and dragged into a horrible cult and turned into a monster. It's wild, like the things that can happen when you surrender control to a prompt-based game like this. And like I went in there thinking like I'm going to explore this one thing, and the game is like, no, this is what's happening, in a way that was really great. And it constantly kept me surprised and entertained. I've never had a situation where the prompt hasn't made me go, oh my gosh, okay, how do I, and then like surprised me and made me think of something fun to do with the vampire and keep things going in that way. I think if you know somebody who doesn't play a lot of tabletop games but who's into journaling, this might be a great gift for them. And I want to stress how great a gift it is, because it is absolutely beautiful. Like as an object, I purchased the PDF, which is very affordable, and immediately regretted it. I'm probably going to go ahead and get the physical copy, because just Google this and just look at what the design is like. It's just it is like, as an object, it is beautiful. And then like as an experience, it is completely unique and unlike anything else in the space. As far that I've experienced anyway.
So what he's talking about is it is a hardbound book that is filled with like items, like not just writing, but like photographs and little notes and things that are just sort of dispersed throughout the book, that like as you're playing, you get to sort of unfold or unlock or reveal these little feelies, like these little physical aspects of somebody's journal. And I think that's really, it's really intimate. Like it feels very much like you're going through somebody's personal belongings in a way that has weight, but also as part of a mechanic of the game. And I just think that's super cool.
Yeah. And I think that you hit the nail on the head there with like how intimate and personal it feels. And that's why this is a solo game too, in some way, because it's really you sitting down and having this kind of interesting, sometimes uncomfortable experience with just yourself there, and with no other person around to judge you, or for you to think about how they might be perceiving your actions at the table. And the game does a really wonderful job, I think, doling out the warnings for that kind of experience, and for encouraging you to be very risk-taking with how you approach it. It isn't necessarily going to be for everyone, but I think it is the type of experience where if any of this sounds remotely interesting to you, I would strongly recommend jumping on it and trying it, because I think it's one of those things where it reminds me again what that space can do that other mediums can't do. Because it is wholly its own thing, right? It is doing something that's hyper specific that games allow themselves to do that very few other genres can even touch on. And I can't, the way that the way that the gameplay elements work just reinforce so many wonderful emotional themes in this game and really contribute to the experience. And it's such a like one of a kind thing that I think you would be remiss not to look at this.
Is there replayability in this? Like, do you find that?
Oh, so much.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the way that it's structured is, it has 100 prompts, and basically you're rolling a D10 and a D6, and you're subtracting the D6 from the D10. So sometimes your prompts aren't moving at all. You're landing at the same prompt twice. Sometimes you're moving backwards a little bit, and you play until your vampire is destroyed. You're talking about multiple endings. This game has one ending. At some point, the vampire is going to be destroyed, and there's a very specific time that will happen in the game. It's like when you run out of certain things, like you'll know it grinds towards that slowly but inevitably. And what prompts you hit are going to be different every time. The order you hit them are going to be different every time. And then on top of that, the game also has alternate prompts in the back. So there's a whole another 100 in case you've played the first 100 prompts enough times and you want something new. And there's also, I think, fan communities that are putting out additional prompts. So
Wow.
It's got a lot. There's a lot there. And I also need to take a moment to applaud the prompts. These prompts are so good. They're so thoughtful, and just the right amount of specificity and vagueness in each and every one of them to just generate your imagination. And it really makes you feel like you're authoring this elaborate story without really forcing you into a direction. They're really masterful. Like, for instance, there's one prompt where you become so good at lying that you invent a memory, and you have to get rid of one of your memories and put it in with a memory that's completely fake. And like, what is that, and why do you do that? Is like an immediately like compelling question, especially because you're coming into that with the context of everything else your vampire has done before that. And where is your vampire even at that moment? Like, they already don't remember. Most of the memories that they started with are probably gone. And like, there's these moving moments of forgetting these things that you've held on to for a real long time because you just kind of have to. It's so wonderful. Do yourself a favor, everybody. Do yourself a favor and get this. It's a lovely experience. And
so
you owe
excited.
it to you. You owe it to you after this very hard pandemic we've all been
after
through.
this pandemic. You want to be 1,000-year-old vampire, right?
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, I mean, I just bought it. It sounds incredible. You can go to 1000yearoldvampire.com. That's where you can buy the book. It's $45 US, and that includes the PDF as well.
And you can also find it on itch.io. Tim Hutchings is the author of this, so you can search his itch page and you can get it from there as well.
Does that include the book, or is that just the PDF version?
If you're looking for just the digital version, you can get it on itch.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And the digital is pretty affordable and accessible, but I'm going to make a strong pitch for get the physical. It's worth it, and there's enough effort and thought and care put into this that if you have the resources available and can afford that $45 asking price, I think you will not regret it.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
All right. So I know we led with some dark and complicated topics, so I would like to pass this over to Glendon, and
we're gonna get dark and complicated here. Darksiders Genesis. And for everyone out there, is it any good? Kind of.
okay.
No, so like I don't know if anyone has ever done this. Probably. looking at your game list. You're like, I want a new game because I guess my backlog isn't satisfying me. So just was thinking, what do I want? And I wanted something very specific. I wanted an ARPG. So as part of last month's Humble Monthly, Darksiders Genesis was included. So I downloaded it, fired it up, and man, it's hitting the spots that I wanted. I don't know. I sometimes get these game cravings where the games I have don't fill them, and this was just sweet spot. It is a top-down hack and slash. Sometimes spells. I always forget about my abilities, but they exist. Adventure through kind of like Diablo 3 meets God of War, but less brutal and funny. It's buddy cop in hell. That's how I described it to my fiance last night. And just delightful. It's not good. It's not good. It's quite bad in places, and it oftentimes doesn't explain things. I spent about 10 minutes looking at a door I couldn't get through because I don't have the ability to get through it yet. But it's got just the right mix of shooting things and layered systems and upgrades that I'm having fun. The story's really light, and it's just a nice reprieve. This is what I wanted.
So that's Darksiders Genesis that you're playing on the PC. And that one came out in 2019, so it's an older game, but it's not super duper old, so it still incorporates a lot of modern mechanics and aesthetic and things like that as well.
Yeah, and it's a puzzle game. Weirdly, there are a lot of puzzles. I was streaming some today, and I got stuck on a puzzle because I couldn't figure it out. I've had to look up 4 puzzles so far in the game because I couldn't figure them out, which is either a really good or a really bad sign, depending on what kind of person you are. For me, it kind of lands in the middle. It generally does a good job of giving you the tools to figure it out and light clues. Like the one puzzle I was doing today was I had to light up some lampposts, which was something I'd never done before, but I did know that if I shoot my flaming blade out, it would light lanterns up. So I thought, if it lights lanterns, it'll probably light these lampposts too. Where I got stuck was I had to do a very quick timing-based and geometry-based bounce of my blade between walls, which I tried 4 times and it didn't work. So I went and looked on YouTube to see if I was doing it right, and I was. So I tried it 4 more times, and on the 8th try, it finally worked. So I don't know what to say. I had fun, though, and I just keep playing it. So, well, it is what it is.
Well, and finding that sweet spot between pushing yourself until you achieve whatever puzzle problem they're trying to give you and just pushing yourself to the point of frustration and quitting. I find that line is very fine, and it varies from person to person. When I was playing my game, my scanner, it's most of the negative reviews are people didn't feel like figuring out the puzzles. And sometimes it's just a matter of what are you used to having the game delivered to you on a platter, and versus what games want to push you to learn on the fly yourself in order to develop your skills in the game. So
and that's probably a mindset thing where I don't actually care enough about the game to bash my head against it. I'm just playing it for fun because I needed to whet my appetite before Biomutant comes out on Monday.
Biomutant. That's right. So yeah, we're hoping to get.
Which came out 2 days ago when you're listening to this podcast.
Right. Time travel. That's a thing. So thank you for that for Darksiders Genesis. Definitely worth checking out. I'm going to go ahead and head over to who's playing Eastshade.
I am.
You are. All right.
Actually, I'm not the only one, because it was the game for the month of May, for the Gamers Job Adventure Game Club that I've been running for nearly 3 years. Every month we kind of vote, all of us, and try to, from a pool of candidates, and try to find a game that we all play together. And Eastshade was the this game for the month of May. So it's actually something that wasn't on my radar at all until Pixie Sticks, one of our GWJ forum members, mentioned it. And she's a wonderful artist in her own right, because Eastshade is a game about being an artist. You are a painter traveling to the island of Eastshade to fulfill your mother's dying wish to visit the place. And it is absolutely drop dead gorgeous. I mean, super pretty, lush vegetation, magnificent ruins, a gorgeous city, and it's populated by bear folk and owl folk, and it's just a delight. There's no killing, there aren't any huge puzzles. You're just walking around, talking to people, helping them, and painting landscapes or portraits or whatever you please, whatever strikes your fancy. And it's just been so chill and just an absolute delight. And I fell in love with it.
Wow. Yeah, no, this looks gorgeous. And this one's another one that is pretty affordable. I think it's like $20, like $25 on Steam. And
that sounds about right.
Yeah,
it's been in some bundles too. I know I own it. I just don't know from where.
You might have picked it up on sale because it was on sale a couple of weeks ago, actually just before it was picked as Game of the Month.
Wow. Yeah, so
it kind of looks like a really verdant Skyrim mod. Almost like, and I mean that in a good way. Like it has a certain Oblivion, Elder Scrolls-esque, like it's first person. The world's very lush and green. Like you talk to people and the camera zooms in on them just a little bit, and it's got that gives it a very homey sort of feeling to me. You know, like, oh, this would be a nice place to visit.
Absolutely. It feels very familiar in that respect because the places aren't that outlandish compared to some other settings that we've seen in a bunch of different games. But I hesitate to call them mechanics because there is some resource gathering and a tiny bit of crafting. You can make your canvas that you paint on, and you can paint over canvases, and you're basically just taking screenshots in essence. But that whole different spin of just immersing yourself in the world, and I know some people didn't really get along with it because they kind of found themselves at a loss, thinking like, oh, but where do I go? What do I do? And it does kind of open up gradually. But if you're looking for something where you don't have to kill anyone and you're just walking around and discovering places, because that's part of the mechanics, you discover places, talk to people, you gain inspiration to paint those pictures. It's a nice little gem.
And I mean, animal people, like I'm a sucker for that. Like if just you can talk to a bear, you can, make friends with an owl, like why not? Like this seems so lovely. I might have to pick this up. This looks and really architecture is gorgeous. Like the very organic structures that are in the game, it really conducts itself in a way that you want to take pictures of things. You want to sort of appreciate the beauty and the aesthetic of this universe that they've created for you to just kind of run around in. Oh, yeah. So Eastshade is delightful. And again, this is another affordable game. Definitely worth checking out. Wow.
It's on a bunch of different platforms. It's on PC, PS4, PS5, I think. Mm-hmm. Pretty Xbox, you name it. It's pretty much in a lot of places because it's everywhere. I believe it's a Unity game.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know I've seen it on Game Pass in the past. I don't know if it's still there, mm-hmm. but it seems like one that would be kind of pretty ubiquitous at this point.
Mm-hmm. All right, so that's Eastshade. Definitely go check that out, folks. Let's get into it. Let's talk a little bit.
I got a question.
Yeah.
I got a question. This was burning in my mind from the start, but I saved it for now. Where are you setting up in the Citadel? Question for everybody here. And why? I can go first because I just spent the last 30 minutes thinking about this.
So yeah, we're talking about Mass Effect. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. So I'm hanging out at the Emporium. where, you know, that, what are they? The people with like the Hanar, the Prothean descendants. Yeah. That little shopkeeper, that place just seems really vibrant. Also, I just want to chat with a Hanar for a while because they have a very different worldview than I do. And I was thinking like lower markets might be fun too, because there's a lot of hijinks that happen there. But between the exploding fire extinguishers that are everywhere there and the fact that it's underground, definitely I'm vibing more with the Emporium and being able to see out. Hopefully at more than the 30 FPS that my computer is getting. But yeah, that's where I am.
Wow. Alima, how about you?
Well, that depends. Which game are we talking about?
I was going to say.
Mass Effect 1. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I'll caveat that.
That's brutal. Mass Effect 1, because it's a lot more contained, is tricky, but I think I'd love a little spot down near in the main alley. I'm not sure how to call it, but below the embassies, kind of like between the consort and the embassies. I think that'd be a perfect picnic spot. You know, you got the fountains and it's very chill. It's very clean because that's where all the 1% people are hanging out. So yeah, that seems like a nice place to. Besides, and there's the best spot for sniper contests up there. So.
Now, I feel like I'd be hanging out in the restaurants and bar areas. Like, I've always worked in those spaces, so those are the places I felt most comfortable. And I also just wander around and look and talk to people there. So probably, probably in that area down below. So where the seedy people hang out, like that's where I want to be.
Yeah, that's where I am too. Cora's Den.
Cora's Den,
put me in Cora's Den. Let's have a fun time in Cora's Den.
There's a lot of violence in Cora's Den. In my experience.
They just let
it up quick, though.
They do. And then you go to Mass Effect 2 and they're like, oh yeah, shame about Cora's Den, huh? Anyway. It's like, oh. That's a shame. I would hang out in the Elcor embassy. Because I love the Alcor. They're just so great. And there's a Volus there who's just such like a curmudgeon. And just hanging around in the Alcor embassy and just listening to the Alcor and the Volus just like go back and forth with each other. It's got like just classic, like, I don't know, Waldorf and Statler vibes almost, but like in a very Mass Effect context. And I just love it. I just love it.
Mm-hmm. So I know that I don't think the only person for whom this is a first-time playthrough, I believe, was Rich. Or did you play No, you didn't play the first one.
No.
So this is
So my prior experience is I played the start of Mass Effect 2. And then I was like, this seems interesting. I should probably play Mass Effect 1. And then existence is difficult, so I never got around to it. And then now the Legendary Edition is out. I'm like, okay, now I can engage with this.
So are you?
Yeah. So this is for me completely. It's like I kind of remember the beginning of Mass Effect 2, but not really. So I'm effectively coming in cold.
Now, are you playing it without any direction or tutorials or anything like that? Like, are you going in completely blind, or are you taking preferred routes?
In part, I'm coming in completely blind because that's the way that I do things. But I'm also watching Paige play.
Yes,
my partner Paige, and she is much farther along than I am. So I've got a little insight of like, oh, I could go there and X thing will happen, or I can kind of see. I have a little preview ahead of where I am. I'm still honestly wandering around the Citadel. Paige is a couple missions out in the future, and I'm just like chilling in the Citadel, trying to find keepers to scan, even though I don't really feel great about that, and might not continue doing it. But it's interesting trying to make decisions in this game because it's so like of its era in some ways, and like in terms of like the idea of like a specter to me as a human being is absolutely abhorrent, and I would be like, no, burn that system down. That is some injustice. But the game is like, yeah, whatever. Garrus is like, oh, these regulations, man, they're keeping me from doing my job. And I'm like, maybe we should defund CSEC. I don't know.
Oh my gosh. So, who are the party members that you have so far as a new player? Like, who's in your group so far? That'll kind of give us an idea where you're at.
I've got everybody in the group except for, I think there's 2 people I haven't located yet. There's 2 outlines. Yeah. I think
know,
Liara.
Those names right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah, because Liara is later. I saw. I've seen the mission where she is added to the group. Yeah. So I don't have Liara yet, and I think I'm missing somebody else. I feel like there's one other outline.
Do you have Rex? Did you get Rex?
Yes.
Okay.
You got Garrus?
Yep.
So you're missing Tally, the Quarian.
Yes. Yes, that is who I'm missing.
Okay.
Paige has her as well.
Right. So you just need to get your alien lady quota up, and then you'll get everybody.
I'm missing alien ladies at the moment. I've got a lot of alien cops and not a lot of alien ladies.
It's a really poor place to be. Yeah.
It's rough.
I haven't played Mass Effect since it launched in 2007.
Wow.
So I'm going back into it, and I think maybe I'd played through it once and then played partially through it again, but I'm going back into it fairly cold, and it's funny to talk about defunding CSEC and stuff, because like my politics have so radically changed since 2007. Like you said, the notion of being a Spectre, the way that like the council, when I first played in 2007, I was like, oh, the council, it's like these 3 different alien races, and then the humans are kind of like the new kids on the block. And I just want to like make the council happy and be part of the council, and like everybody will get along, and it's so great. And now the council, I'm like, you high-handed dipshits. Like, I hate these people so much. Like, I give them evidence, like crystal evidence, and they're gaslighting me. And I just get so angry. And I don't know, I guess we'll be kind of spoiler cautious here, because a lot of people are probably going to be coming back to Mass Effect for the first time. Or if you're like me, you'll still like be surprised by plot twists because you completely forgot about them.
Yep.
But yeah, like my relationship with the council, I forgot how front-loaded the Citadel stuff is, how fast... Like this Mass Effect 1, like compared to 2, is so bracing. Like Mass Effect 1 is just like, oh, okay, time to form your party. New party member. Like they just throw them on you, and you're just like a handshake, and they're a part of your crew. It's like it shorthands so many things that in Mass Effect 2 they do such a better job of giving characters motivations for joining you, giving incentives for them to join you, and building like, and actually with game mechanics, building this whole sense of trust, like not across the board, but just generally better. But I really enjoyed, I think, playing Mass Effect, not so much because I thought it was like a great, amazing gameplay experience that held up perfectly, or the best narrative experience, although I did like the overall story quite a bit. But I liked playing it just almost like as a historical artifact to see how they built on that formula that they discovered in the first one. Yeah,
it definitely shows its age. Like there's definitely some of that there, but I don't find it to be limiting. It's just kind of, it's interesting to acknowledge like how things were set up during that time, and just sort of what our expectations are in 2021, whatever year this is. So, like, that's been a really interesting experience. Lima?
Yeah, I was just thinking, the big difference also is that, yes, Mass Effect 1 can be really clunky at the beginning, but what really struck me as I was replaying it, even though I replay it every couple of years, so it's still pretty fresh, Mass Effect 1 is very good about building the world right from the get-go. Which it doesn't have to do in the second game. And that's why in the first world, it's giving you all this information about the Quarians and the Geth and who Rex's people are. And that's why it's doing a lot at the beginning, and it's kind of like throwing all these things at you. So it can be also a deterrent, but it suffered from the whole, we're starting with a blank slate.
Yeah, we've got that. We need to establish the base before we can really develop some of the further story for sure. I have a question for everybody. Now, historically, when I play this game, I always go Paragon. I always go FemShep. And I did do that this time, and I stopped myself because I was like, why? Like, this is the third time I've probably played this game. Like, why do this? So I rolled Mask Shep, so, like, Guy Shep, and I'm going Renegade. This guy is a complete fucking asshole. And everybody says FemShep's, like, the voice acting is just so much stronger. It's just so there. But like, when you do Renegade FemShep, she sounds like a cold hard badass, but it's not overly rude. She just has a mission, whereas like Mask Shep is just a dick. Like, the way that it's voiced, the way that you behave, like, he's just an asshole, and I love it. Like, it is so hard for me to pick the Renegade option. I have to look at this whole thing as a joke, so that every answer of his is just sarcastic, it's goofball, like, it's just so wrong. But in the context of this redemption arc that I'm building for this guy, because I know I'm going to be playing 2 more games with this asshole, so I'm like, maybe he starts off just a complete dick, and he goes through this process of becoming a different person by, like, game 2 and game 3. So I'm actually really looking forward to creating this narrative, especially since I think because of the limitations on how many types of relationships you can have in the first and somewhat in the second game, like, you don't really get the opportunity to have a, like, relationship as a male character with another male character until I think 3. Oh yeah?
You can fix that. I know, natively.
There's like,
mods that
you can mod that, and like, as somebody who always like seeks out the like queer representation in games, I'm fully aware that you can mod most games to have that, but that is queering the system. That is something that people do to find the representation that they're looking for all the time. So yeah, we know that's out there, but that's frustrating. When it comes natively to a game, that is a big deal, because that's not something I'm forcing the game to allow for me. That is something that the game is building for me. Like, somebody else is building that for me. It's not something I'm generating for myself. Not to like, I'm not trying to like rag on what you said, because I like that's definitely worth recognizing. And I think it's really important to like acknowledge that, so that other people who are looking for those things and are not getting those things can still get them. But, and like, I hope I'm not spoiling anything, but like, Caden is like our bisexual hero in this game. Like, he starts out as a heterosexual romance option for FemShep, but I think by 3 you can romance him as Mask Shep. So like, that is, you don't see a lot of that in games. You like bisexuality in modern society, especially in media, is usually fixed on a male gaze perspective, which is very like, haha, sexy. It's usually 2 ladies, but having 2 male characters be able to have a, like an actual like recognized relationship status, like, that's a big deal, especially for a main character. Like, that's great. Like, that's we want to see more of that and have it not be a big deal like that. So that's my redemption arc for this asshole, is I want him to not be nice to anybody, not build any relationships in the beginning, but through the development and playthrough of games like 1 and 2 and 3, he can have that redemption arc and he can change as a person. Anyway, that's my goal for Mass Effect.
The real tragic part of this is that they had actually planned for a I say broshep, a broshep Caden romance right from the get-go. They had written it and they got overruled, which is just heartbreaking. But
which makes them bringing that back in 3 so much more like, yes, like, because not only do they still get to, I mean, it's not, they didn't get to do it when they got to do it, but they still get to achieve that at some point. And like, that shows progress. That shows that from the start of Mass Effect 1 to the development of Mass Effect 3, there was a change in culture that allowed for that to be a thing.
And they actually wrote it differently than the FemShep Caden romance. Whether you keep that romance over the 3 games or you romance him anew in the 3rd game, they didn't just take the romance and, you know, just replace the lines and re-record the lines with Mark Meir instead of Jennifer Hale. They actually wrote it slightly. I mean, like, obviously there are commonalities because Caden is still Caden, but they made a few differences. So it's not the exact same romance. And because I've YouTubed it, and it's great. It's amazing.
Oh, that makes me so happy. I love you, Mass Effect. We love you, Mass Effect. Like,
so
this
much.
is such. So
that's probably like what really surprised me the most, because I'm not a game replay person. I generally one and done most games, and going back to something that is, I just kind of want to emphasize, like, Mass Effect is 14 years old. Does that sound right? About 14 years old. That's really old, and I have such a fondness for this series, and I forgot how good Mass Effect 2 is. Like, I remember it as being my favorite of the trilogy, but it is a stunner as far as the game goes. Although I have to admit, I missed some of the RPG-ness of the original Mass Effect, going straight from that into 2. It was like bracing to go from like all these different guns to just... It's kind of unsatisfying, not really managing inventory of characters, where you're just sort of picking things from a list and there's no real stats. So like they have different functions, but you don't really get a sense of like just the way they sort of went more action heavy with Mass Effect 2. I appreciate it on one hand because it is a much better action game, but I kind of miss the crunchiness of the original Mass Effect. Like these days, with so many games ending up being looter shooters with like so many different pieces of armor and different weapons and everything, like Mass Effect was leaping far past that. And then since then, design has brought more RPG back into the action genre. Like, I'm so fascinated to see what the next Mass Effect game is and where they land on that spectrum.
I mean, can we wish list that for a moment here? Can we just say, like, I even though I feel that the cinematics were stronger in 2, that the drama was heightened in 2, like, there's the pureness of 1, and that sort of RPG sort of focus is really charming. And it's probably why I keep replaying Mass Effect 1 more than the others. I actually still need to finish Mass Effect 3. That's my goal for this run, by the way. Like, I've completely finished 2 and 1 last time, and I played like 90% of 3 and then didn't end it. Don't judge me, but like, it's one of those things where it's really going to be interesting to see how much more of that RPG they bring back into the series. Rich?
Yeah, there's a really interesting thing in 1 that I'm finding where I feel it's the perfect kind of bridge game from what the space BioWare was playing in, which was very much like that, like kind of Baldur's Gate isometric RPGs that were kind of crunchy and had a certain way about them, and then what they became. Like, when I think about a BioWare RPG, like a Dragon Age Inquisition, and I can see it in Mass Effect 1, and I can also in Mass Effect 1 see like original Baldur's Gate in some, like, just like if I squint real hard. And it's interesting because that isometric RPG has moved on, and there are different iterations of that right now that are existing, that are like building on that formula and kind of going in their own direction. The Pathfinder Kingmakers of the world, the Tyrannies of the world, like Obsidian is still pumping those things out. BioWare's the BioWare RPG, though, I feel like only BioWare does things that feel quite like this, and it's really like it's interesting to me how familiar this game feels, even though I've never played it. But also, when I think back to what it would have been like at the time, how remarkable and cutting edge and unique it must have seemed. Like the waters that they're playing in the context of the moment that they came out, I struggle to think of anything that was even like that. Well,
and there's a reason why they're still trying to recapture that after like losing a lot. I think we don't know what's going on in the minds of BioWare, but I think that they knew they capitalized on something great. They kept trying to recapture that magic for other platforms with different people and different structures, and it's almost like they never quite were able to get that perfect alignment again. It's almost like it was a moment in time where they just captured this golden moment, were able to ride it out, but trying to recreate that thing inorganically is always kind of a challenge. Sean?
Mm-hmm. Well, Mass Effect was kind of represented a culmination of something they were building to, like not just from Baldur's Gate and Neverwinter Nights, but like you think of Knights of the Old Republic, like you can actually track BioWare games where they, like with the original Baldur's Gate, where you could see every dice roll, every stat crunch. And then as you go along, like I think even Knights of the Old Republic, you could access that, but I feel like it was a little bit more hidden. And then by the time we kind of get into Mass Effect, they've basically hidden all the dice rolls. Like they've hidden all the RPG number crunching. And that was really controversial like at the time. Like people were really annoyed by that. And they were doing things that would be considered really player unfriendly now. Like if you are not spec'd to use a sniper rifle, you don't get to zoom in with it, which effectively makes it a useless weapon. Like they'll still let you equip it, but you can't even zoom in. And they took that out in the remaster, which is so telling. Like they actually in the remaster in Mass Effect 1, even if you're like playing a Vanguard, you can still whip out a sniper rifle and use it very effectively. You just don't get bonuses. So it actually completely changes Mass Effect 1 in a really fundamental way that like because it's been 14 years, Mass Effect 1 is how I remember it, but it's definitely not how it actually was. Like there's so many things they've just gone and like scrubbed some Crisco over and like smoothed over, and like it's like very same, but it's not the game that we played back in 2007. And it's fascinating to see where they applied pressure and where they made changes and where they held back.
So I'm playing a different game called Find All the Holes That Are Still There from Mass Effect 2007. I have been using every exploit in the game and searching them to make sure I have an optimal run. So on Friday, I spent an hour and a half using arbitrage between Dr. Michelle and all the other marketplaces in Mass Effect 1 to make 1 million credits because I wanted to. So I have 1 million credits now, and it's great. And then I also used the infinite Paragon exploit, so I'm infinitely Paragon and infinitely Renegade. And it's just, I've had so much fun like pulling back the threads and seeing like where is the game still broken and where did they fix it. There's still the equip any armor glitch. It's just a little bit more complicated now. And it's so fun to see this game that got remastered, but they just left some things in there and gave the Mako jump jets and removed sniper sway. It's just, for me, it's a fun exercise in like archivalism versus like updating for modern sensibilities and like what's really worth it. Because I'm sure getting rid of all those glitches would have been a nightmare. And also they don't really affect it, because if people like me want to be weird and go sell equipment for an hour and a half, like let them. I love when games do that. So that's been my experience, and it's fun. I love doing that.
I'd completely forgotten about that exploit. It's ridiculous. It's also
amazing.
very amazing. Yes,
it's so fun. It's so fun. I guess I should just briefly explain. So if you do Dr. Michelle's quest and you befriend her, she gives you prime rates at her store, which means you can sell things for double what they're normally worth. So you have expensive stuff, you go sell it to her, and then this is where it's even better in Mass Effect in 2021. Because fast travel is actually fast, you fast travel over to the markets, run over to the Volus, go buy back, and you buy back for half the cost you bought. So then you just have like this infinite arbitrage loop, and then you can go buy like 67,000 credit things, and then pretty soon it's just like money.
You just invented space capitalism.
I did, but now I can do whatever I want, and I have a really cool gun.
you can buy the shiny Spectre stuff.
Yeah, right off the start.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I still got absolutely murdered by a Thresher Maw the first time I saw one, so apparently money doesn't fix everything, but
Well, they boosted that Thresher Maw, so there's that.
They knew Glendon was coming. Yeah. So, that's... So yeah, that's Mass Effect. We are definitely going to be enjoying that. I think I'm still seeing a lot of folks playing it right now. I forgot about that sniper sway. I remember playing, like, when I was streaming this, I'm like, wow, I'm really good at this now. No, they took that away. Like, they made sniping a lot easier. Because I remember, like, I love sniping in games. It's one of my favorite. I like to stand back and just, like, pick people off. But I didn't do that with the original because I wasn't good at it. And then I just... Wow, thanks for taking me down a peg. I thought I had just gotten better at it. Like, you know, just my experience of playing snipers now.
Yeah, it's from that school of thought in the mid-aughts where to make a shooter be an RPG, what they basically had was like the game would just like shove you in the back when you were trying to shoot because your stats weren't high enough. It would just like keep jostling your elbow every time you tried to aim. Like, it's just, in retrospect, it's so silly and so like obviously frustrating, but...
Right,
that's
and that was
how they rolled.
Yeah, that was in the era where if you wanted to use a sniper rifle, you had to hit the X button or the space bar or whatever it was to quote unquote hold your breath. So you had like 5 seconds of shoot time, which you don't really see that in games so much anymore. Thank you, video games, for not doing that. But
you do. A game of this year, Outriders, had some really egregious sniper sway.
I vaguely recall that.
I know.
I don't get it.
Which is why...
Did you have to like manually push the X button to breathe in and then the C button to breathe out, just kind of like constantly as you're playing the game, though? Just because if you don't do that, then you'll stop breathing and pass out.
Can you imagine? Oh my god.
Breathing Simulator 2021.
I don't need a simulator. I have trouble breathing in real life already. I don't need a simulator for it. Anyway, that was... That is our update on the Mass Effect Legendary Edition. It's on most platforms at this point. We're mostly playing it on PC or PS5, and it's been an absolute delight. So I do look forward to hearing about everybody's updates on how they're playing this game, how they're breaking it or remaking it for themselves. So you can always send those into call@gamerswithjobs.com. We always love to hear your stories. We're going to go ahead and take a break. When we get back, your emails and more. And we're back, and Glendon, you've got our first email.
This is from Lunchbox12682 on the forums. They say, hello, how do you handle games you really want to play, but the game or genre is inherently stressful, i.e. Dark Souls? I have an easy answer for this because it's how I play Dark Souls. It's how I play 50% of my games these days. I just look up a guide. Because if I know what's coming, it's not stressful. So I just went through a guide of Dark Souls. The downside, there's a big downside to this, is I missed 20% of Dark Souls because the guide I had was not updated for the DLC. So I missed like a whole bunch of stuff behind a waterfall. But for me, like knowing
you didn't have your Calamite cute.
No. It's very sad. So yeah, for me, guides, if I have a guide, I know what's coming, no surprises. That's how I played Bloodborne as well. You know, sometimes it breaks it, but that's my strategy.
So I've got a pre-question, and sorry to cut you off, Rich. What is considered inherently stressful? Because I think that can be different from person to person. Like, what do you folks find stressful in a game? I guess this is now a 2-part question. Because
when it's hard, I get stressed when things are hard. That's my you know, thing. Or alternately, something like what is it? Stellaris. That's the one I was thinking of, where it's like this big barrier to entry and even thinking about it's difficult. Then I remember before I played Stellaris, I watched like over lunchtime, I watched just a bunch of how-to videos, and then I came into it with a lot more knowledge. So I felt like I was playing from a ground where I knew something. So for me, it's just get as much information and knowledge prior to tackling something big and tough.
So what's
I think for me, like what will be stressful in a game is if it is not thoughtful and considerate about what it's doing. Mm-hmm. And I also think that there is discourse around games that creates stressful situations about them. Like Dark Souls, for instance, is a game that I think is not often served by its discourse and community that is very, or the portion of the community that's very into the get good type of mentality or likes to play up how challenging it is. Because it's actually like a pretty forgiving game is what I found when I started playing those types of games. And for me, like, games shouldn't be stressful. And my response to this would be like, you have an impulse to want to do something. So I would say, where does that impulse come from? Like, what is it that you want to do? Or why is this game striking you? And pay attention to that and ignore anything else that might just be noise, because there's a lot of noise about things in general. And some of it could be interesting and good and useful and fun noise that you can engage in later. But some of it might just not be rooted in anything that will match up to your reality.
Sean, what do you find stressful?
Not much, honestly. I would say horror games for sure. Mm-hmm. I think they are inherent. They're designed to be, right? If you're going to be scared, you need to be some like upregulated stress in your body to like be spooked, right? Because you're already kind of uptight about what you're playing. And it kind of actually makes me think way back to the original Blair Witch Project movie, actually. Oh, God. I was probably 18 years old. Mm-hmm. I read I was working in a call center, and for the first 2 or 3 weeks, we weren't actually taking calls yet, so they were paying me to come in and just surf the internet. And so right around that time was when the Blair Witch Project rumors had started, and there was like a website dedicated to it, but it wasn't totally clear that it wasn't a real thing. Obviously, it wasn't a real thing because it was going to theaters. Nonetheless, I wasn't bought in, but I was still kind of immersed in it. And so when we went to the theater to see it, and I don't like horror movies, I don't watch them. Near the end of that movie, I was so scared. I was like looking at the exit sign glowing above the door to the exit of the theater to remind myself that it wasn't real. Like, I was so freaked by it. Like, my heart's pounding. I was just totally freaking out.
Just a quick follow-up question. When you went back to the call center the next day, did you just stand in the corner staring at it?
Yeah, but for completely different reasons. It wasn't a cool place to work. So, like, when I'm playing horror games these days, I don't really need to, like, sit there and remind myself that it's not real or anything. But, like, when I was playing Resident Evil 7, which is especially in the first half, is a very, like, intense, grotesque, scary kind of game. It wasn't so much that I was repeating to myself that this isn't real, but there was definitely like a part of me that was just like keeping my breathing regulated, my heartbeat down, because I don't like being scared. So I'll just do things to avoid it. When I know a lot of people like horror games and movies because they like the sensation of being scared and surprised. I just don't. So like, I just regulate as I'm playing. So when there's a jump scare, like, you wouldn't even see me react. Like, it actually makes me kind of sad, to be honest, but I'm a hermit now. This is just how I do it.
When so as far as jump scares go, so there's two things that stress me out about games. What you're talking about, which is the artificial generation of fear and that flight or fight response. It's a real response, but the source of that is artificial, and expectation and failure. So for me, it's just like when I'm playing a multiplayer game, what I find inherently stressful is if I know I'm letting my team down because I flubbed a shot, or I used my ult too early, or whatever. Like, that's where my sense of stress comes from, and that's where the anxiety starts to rise, is the anticipation of failing somebody else's expectations. And I mean, that probably extends to other parts of my life as well, but it's one of those things that, like, in order to mitigate it, I have to consciously kind of say, like, that you care more about this than they do. Like, I have to sort of, like, mentally prepare myself for what I know is coming, what I'm inflicting on myself, as far as what's inherently stressful. But as far as horror games and the games that are designed to stress you out, some people jump. Some people, you see that anxiety spike, and I watch streams of the games. I realized fairly quickly I wanted to play the tall lady Resident Evil game, Resident Evil 8, but after watching a few streams, I know that I would not be able to handle that kind of tension personally. I am jumping right along with these streamers. I'm screaming along with these streamers as they're going through it because I can't do that by myself. But if somebody else is doing it third hand, I can handle it. So scary games, I don't play myself. I let other people do it, and I get scared right along with them because it's easier for me to cope with. But some of them don't jump. Some people just shut down. Like, something bad will happen, and they'll pause it and just, like, you can just feel the disassociation coming through. Like, they just immediately are like, gotta pause it and just move on, because there are different ways to cope with how we handle those anxiety spikes, and some people just flatline. It's just the easiest way to handle it, and I respect that. I want to get to that level where I can just like turn it off and just breathe for a moment. Alima, how about you?
I have a very simple solution. Most of the time is I just don't. I can't. Played, and seriously, I played Amnesia, and within, I kid you not, within 5 minutes, I had turned that thing off. When I can't remember when it came out. It was 1992 or something, when Seventh Guest came out.
Oh, gosh.
There was that intro with the creepy violins. I shut down the computer, like not just the game. I pulled the plug on the entire computer. I'm a scaredy cat. That's okay. I've accepted that about myself. But I have noticed that and this is what happened actually when we did the charity stream, and I streamed some Prey, because I would never have played Prey in a million years. Not a chance. But I played it with the whole of the community watching, and to have that, to know that other people were there to kind of have like hand walk me through it, it was very comforting, and I played through in like Prey in its entirety and loved it. But yeah, most of the time I just don't. I can't.
So and that taps into what so many people do, how so many people experience scary movies. Like, I don't know if I mean, I'm sure people do it. There's probably plenty of people out there who go and watch a scary movie by themselves, but I really feel like scary movies and horror in general is really a community process. Like, you go and watch these movies with other people, or you sit down on the couch with somebody else and get scared together. Like, that idea of that shared experience of fear, I think it is really leveled when you get to share that with somebody else. Like, when it's by yourself, it can just go and go and go and grow, whereas somebody else can help like mitigate that terror. So thanks for the question. Yeah,
I just laugh.
Laughter, and that's another way of handling it too. It's how you decompress. Like like going through, do they still have these like carnival houses, like scary, like haunted houses, where it's just people jumping out at you, and like laughter is a way to release that tension. So, I mean, you're just like running through a haunted house where people are jumping at you with chainsaws and clown masks and stuff. Like, you're just laughing the entire time because it's a way to just like expel that energy. Totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. Love it. So thank you for the awesome question, Lunchbox. Much appreciated. Sean, you've got our next question.
Yeah, this one is from Twitter user @DeadZerok, who asks, have any of you tried out in-home game streaming? Steam Link, Xbox, or PlayStation? Why did I say it like that? PlayStation. PlayStation. How was it? So if you're not aware, in-home game streaming basically means that you are streaming from one device in your home, whether it's your Xbox One or your Xbox Series X or whatever, or your PlayStation 4 or 5. You can stream those to another device. So I actually did this after I got my first COVID vaccine shot. I needed to rest a lot the next day because it really nailed me. But I'd been playing 13 Sentinels on the PS4, but I didn't want to like sit up in a chair in my living room. I wanted to play it in my bed. So I installed the PlayStation app on my MacBook, which is like a 10-year-old MacBook at this point.
Dang.
And from the app, you can find the PlayStation device on your network, and you can start it up remotely. You can connect your PS4 controller into the MacBook, and it'll just stream it right from your PS4 right onto your MacBook screen. and you can play it, and you can even go to the dashboard and everything. Like, you play it totally as if you were sitting in front of your console. So you can do that with like a Vita. You can do that with an iPad. You can do that with an Xbox, a PlayStation. With Steam, there's different options. The main one being the Steam Link. So I've used that in the past, where I do Steam Link games from my PC to like little Steam Link box connected to a TV. And it's going to have varying degrees of success depending on how you're set up. It works well for me in my situation right now because I'm on a 5 gigahertz wireless network, and the router's nearby, so it works really well. But I found with Steam Link at my old house, unless the PC was directly wired into the router, even running at 1080p was like real touch and go, like real hitchy. So it's really, mileage may vary, but routers are getting a lot better these days. And if you have strong 5 gigahertz connection, then normally you're going to be able to stream stuff inside your home at a pretty good rate for the most part.
Well, and this house is old, so it's like plaster, and I find that because I'm in the same house. If the Wi-Fi and whatever device I am originally streaming from is in the same space, and the device I'm streaming to is in the same room. So it's like, if I want to play from my Xbox to my tablet in bed, as opposed to like sitting up and playing at my desk, I can do that and there's no issue. But if I try to go anywhere else in the house, it's just like, good luck. Like, no, you're not. Like, it's pretty unstable, unless it's a super simple, like, puzzle type game or something that doesn't require strong reflexes or timing. But yeah, I was confused about this question, which is why I gave it to Sean, because originally I was like, is that like Game Pass or something like that? It's a little bit different. So I appreciate the clarification there.
It's like your own personal Game Pass with games that you bought. But I have to say, like, with streaming in particular, like a game like 13 Sentinels, which is basically a visual novel with animation and some like light combat puzzling that's turn-based, works really, really well for streaming. Like, stuff like that is just totally aces for that. I would not try and like play Bloodborne streaming. Like, you wouldn't be able to do the timing. No good. Yeah.
Ultimately, the reason why I'm interested in streaming and these like streaming services is there's a gorgeous claw-footed bathtub in this house, and I love the idea of being able to play games on my tablet while in the tub, but like, I've only been able to do that with very specific games.
Yes, I bring the solution. I mentioned it last week. I'll sing its praises again. Moonlight game streaming. Whatever Valve
Moonlight,
is doing.
coincidentally, also the main villain in Bloodborne.
Nah.
Oh yeah. No wonder it works so well. Right. But it takes a little bit of an onboarding process, but it's got like every device compatibility. It works on Steam Links. Just FYI, the Steam Link default hardware and software is bad. I want to use stronger language, but it's bad. So don't, like, on default, I have like a top of the line mesh network and I cannot get it to work with it. But Moonlight, the encoding is better. The systems are better. I think it does more of the encoding. For whatever reason, the Steam Link seems to put more emphasis on the destination than the source. So it's just limited by its hardware that's there. So running Moonlight on your powerful PC, I've played Mass Effect, I was playing Darksiders. It is beautiful. Again, a little bit of finickiness to get it working. I even have gone to the process of hacking my Switch already to stream desktop games to it. So cannot sing the praises of it.
Cool.
Excellent. Rich, you have our thread of the week.
Okay, so we've got a kind of fun special circumstance here for our thread of the week. There is a thread that was posted January 29th, 2003, which means that this thread is 18 years old. This thread can serve in the military. That is how old this thread is. But this thread cannot yet drink in the U.S. So Luther Blissett put out this thread that was basically asking people where they worked and what they did, hence the thread being called Gamers with Jobs. It's all about the jobs. It quickly became kind of an abandoned thread until it was revived by Mr. Tomato Head on May 11th, who says, I think it would be fun to talk about what careers/jobs we had and have had since the creation of this abandoned thread. Anyone interested? Yeah, so what jobs have you had between January of 2003 and today, the moment that you are listening to this podcast? Go to this thread and share what has happened in your life. What has been your career journey? There's already some really fun and remarkable stories in here. The original poster of the thread, Luther, has not come back. I don't know if Luther is still out there, but I hope they are. And I personally would love to hear from Luther, but I would also love to hear from everyone else.
So,
yeah, like what have you been up to these past 18 years? How's it been?
So, as a point of correction, the thread was revived by Max Shrek, who is not a bot. He sure as hell posted like a bot on that one. It's just some random non sequitur that really had nothing to do with the thread. Do you know?
It's not random. It's a quote from The Fifth Element. It's a 1997 movie from Luc Besson. It has Gary Oldman in it, Bruce Willis. It's and Chris Tucker. Most notably. I am a meat popsicle is what the main character replies to the police when they come to raid the apartment building.
Oh my gosh, I didn't scroll back far enough. I'm so sorry to have missed that.
I'm so glad you knew that reference, because I was like, what is going on here? Are you okay? Okay, so he randomly posts a quote in this random thread just for shits and giggles, and it developed into this, like, okay, so what are you doing now? Like, I think people like the idea of sort of revisiting where this thread started and what it can kind of mean now. So I've had, and I posted this in the thread, I've had so many jobs in the last 18 years that I honestly can't keep track of all of them. So I just posted what I was doing at around 2003 and what I'm doing now. So for me, it was like, I think at that time I was still working like banquets and catering. I was doing restaurant jobs. I was also I believe just starting school. So I was a part-time student and just had a series of different types of jobs that I was doing at the time. And now I do graphic design for like a financial education company. Super dry stuff, but it's great. Like it's just kind of a different trajectory. At the time I was going to school for interior design, and that slowly morphed into graphic design. So how about you guys? What kind of work have you guys been doing in the last 18 years? Okay, what did you do? What were you doing in 2003 and what are you doing now?
Okay, I'll start. 2003, I was 2 years into being in New York City. So I would have been working at that point as a dog walker, more than likely. And today I'm a dog trainer, which is actually kind of true. There was a long pause between being a dog walker and becoming a dog trainer. I actually re-upped my becoming a trainer during pandemic because a lot of people got dogs, and I could do it kind of remotely with what I remembered from that job. So that's a fun little thread. But I'm also I do a whole lot of contract work in a lot of different fields. I do freelance writing. Not just for games, but for other sorts of things. Today, I just prior to COVID, I was doing figure modeling of all things, and lots of acting work, the occasional voiceover thing. But yeah, I still have a hodgepodge of jobs that public speaking. Coaching, I do that as well. Yeah, less so now because of the pandemic. There's a lot.
You're
lot
like
of jobs
me, where you've had like a million jobs. Like you've done a little bit of everything, and I'm so curious to hear whenever we talk about something for you to say, oh, well, I used to do a job. I used to have a job where I used to do this thing. That is my favorite thing about discussing random topics with you. Sometimes you'll just be like, oh yeah, I used to do that. needs to do that.
New York City requires you to have 6 different careers simultaneously in order to like barely make rent. But it's kind of wonderful in some ways.
Alima, how about you?
My answer is going to be kind of boring because in 2003 I was trying to get into med school, and ultimately got in. So now I'm now in 2021 I'm an attending. I eventually got through med school because it took like 14 years, and now I'm at the head of my own department. So,
wow. I love how
Incredible.
modest everybody is with their accomplishments here. Like, you've done so much. All of you have done such great things. It's so nice to hear.
Real life femshep.
Yep. Yeah. Now, before during the break, Glendon, you mentioned I think you were an actual child in 2003. So I think you've
10. I was in grade 5. I was learning
you were
about like multiplication.
And now you're a data analyst. Amazing. It really paid out for you.
You've come so far. What do you think about it?
I think I was like in grade 5. I was learning about the recorder. That cursed instrument you played. Grade 5 was a really successful year for me. I seem to like go like 2 years of success and then like every third year have massive failure. I've bucked that trend, but so we'd like just moved to a new house a couple of years before that, which I had to break into. That was like a highlight of my childhood. And now I went to school for a degree that I don't use anymore, but work in tech consulting and that kind of stuff. So love numbers and making them make sense and talking to people. And then I get to talk to people about video games. It's great. I love my job. Love my life.
Yay. How about you, Sean? Where were you and where are you at?
Well, I was starting this website called Gamers with Jobs. You can tell it was pretty early in the process when this thread came up because I'm actually posting. So my account on GWJ was I think January 9th, 2003. And this thread is January 29th. So this is 20 days after I'd made my account, probably when we were setting up the site. And so I'm still posting like in here, like, welcome to the forums, Luther, because I could still individually welcome people as they showed up into the community at that point. So, I was just sort of making the rounds, glad handing, I suppose. I was doing that. I was a consultant, doing a lot of things I wasn't really qualified to do. Like I was building websites for people using like PostNuke and Dreamweaver. And like I was a consultant for a company that like owned a bunch of Tim Hortons restaurants, and I was their IT consultant. So I did a lot of IT consulting around this time and just generally hustling. I don't know. I ran the website. I did that. And then eventually I shelved all my clients. And I started working for this company that I eventually bought a part in and did that for like 10 years. And then I've left that behind in the day-to-day stuff. And obviously I've, the website is largely handed over into very capable hands and everything. And I'm like just on the cusp of a lot of new things. So I'm not quite sure what I'm doing yet, but thank you for bumping this thread and just generally making me feel very very grateful and very old.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for the feedback, everybody. And thank you to Max Shrek and Mr. Tomato Head for putting a bit of life into this thread here. Yeah.
Just quick note, if you're still listening, word of caution. As someone who works in data security, do not give away too much personal identifiable information, especially jobs, locations, and titles, because those are often security questions, which means your accounts can get hacked.
Right.
So just mentioning that, it's a good rule of thumb, including here, because call. Google does scrape the entire forums, and anybody can look it up. So just, watch your data.
Be vague. You can be descriptive about other things. Yeah.
Can I offer an alternate kind of way people could answer this question without going into specifics too? I would be interested in hearing what people would tell themselves at that age about the idea of work and working.
Oh, God.
There's
That's
a question.
That's some real life coach stuff right there.
Yeah.
Excellent. So thank you so much, everybody, for those questions. We love getting your questions. Please email those to us at call@gamerswithjobs.com. You can also tweet them at us at GWJCC as well. We love getting your questions. Please do send those in. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today to talk about Mass Effect and video games and answering some questions. Sean, where can folks find you online?
Twitter is probably just fine, at Sean Andrich.
Excellent. And Alima, where can we find you?
I'm Alima on the forums, on Twitch, pretty much anywhere, and that's spelled Eleima, and I'm at Alima Stargazer on Twitter.
Excellent. And Glendon, where can we find you?
At StayGoldGH on Twitter. I'll post my game streams. Once I get my internet figured out, I will actually be able to stream in more than 12 FPS. So
Excellent.
look out for that sometime soon.
Yay.
Yay. And Rich, where can we find you?
I am at the Harpo Marxist on Twitter, Twitch, and other places that don't begin with the letters TWI. It's at the Harpo Marxist, all one word, like Harpo Marx plus Marxism, basically. So the Harpo Marxist.
Excellent. And I am Amanda. I'm Amoebic on the forums, on Twitter, and most other places as well. And that's AMOEBIC. And yeah, that's where I am. I'm back on Twitter. Not me there and ask questions, and I'll follow you if you follow me back. Yeah. Yeah.
I just want to compliment your delivery on "I'm back on Twitter" was like perfect. "I'm back on Twitter" delivery. It was exactly right.
Are you being forced? Do we need to call some help?
There was some reason why I came back. Like it was
You yelled at Best Buy.
Oh, I mean, that's a good reason. That was a few weeks ago. There was another reason why I came back, and I don't recall what it is now. I think it was mostly for like game streaming. Like it was, I kept logging into the Gamers with Jobs account to announce game streaming, and it was just like, why am I doing this? So I'm back. I'm back.
Speaking of the Gamers with Jobs account,
Yeah.
you can follow us at GWJCC on Twitter. And we would like to thank the talented Ian Dorsch for the intro and the outro to our show. You can check him out at iandorsch.com.
We'd also like to thank our wonderful and brilliant producer, Jonathan Downen, for the hard work that he does. And as always, thank you to you, our listeners, for joining us.
If you've enjoyed this episode, consider leaving us a rating or review on your podcast app of choice. That's going to do it for us this week. We're going to go ahead and head out, and we'll see you again next week.